I'm Mark Esper, former United States Secretary of Defense and the John S. McCain Distinguished Fellow at the McCain Institute for International Leadership here in Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us. I'm proud to welcome you to another installment of our program. Today, I'm honored to welcome a longtime friend of the United States, the current Prime Minister of the Republic of Lithuania, Her Excellency, Prime Minister Ingrida Šimonytė. Relations between the United States and Lithuania have been strong for many decades, have only grown stronger in the recent past. Indeed, this year we are celebrating 100 years of unbroken diplomatic relations between our two countries, a relationship built on friendship, common interests, and shared values. As a NATO member state, Lithuania is on the front lines for the alliance against Russia and is one of the most vocal advocates for a united effort to counter the Kremlin's aggression. Lithuania also hosts one of NATO's multinational battlegroups, which helps to provide strong deterrence and defense for the alliance. These types of actions demonstrate Lithuania's resolve, commitment, and ability to defend their territory and people, as well as that of NATO member countries. On these issues and more, we have no better guest today to give us further insights than Prime Minister Šimonytė. The Prime Minister has had a distinguished career, having served in a variety of high-level political roles throughout her professional lifetime. Previously, for example, she held positions as the Minister of Finance, Director of the Tax Department, and a member of Lithuania's parliament. She was also the President of the Baltic Council of Ministers. Just last week, the Prime Minister was awarded the Madeleine K. Albright Democracy Award from the National Democratic Institute. In 2021, she received the John S. McCain Freedom Award from the International Republican Institute. Both honors are a testament to the Prime Minister's leadership and courage, standing up for freedom and democracy in Lithuania, in Europe, and indeed around the world. Prime Minister Šimonytė is also a champion of the historic U.S.-Lithuanian partnership, so it is my honor to welcome her here today. Welcome, Madam Prime Minister.
Good morning or good afternoon in my part of the world, and very nice to listen to those kind words, and thank you for having me on this stream.
Well, thank you as well. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name wrong. My Lithuanian is not very good.
Well, it's fine. It's fine. I hear all sorts of pronunciations, but my surname is Šimonytė, so it's very close to what you said. And I think we should not look for perfect pronunciations.
Very well. Well, let me start by asking you a philosophical question about values. Last year, as I mentioned, you received the John S. McCain Freedom Award on behalf of the people of Lithuania and Belarus. In your acceptance speech, you explained why Lithuania is there for those who seek democracy and freedom, saying, be they in our neighborhood or in a distant Hong Kong or Taiwan. It's because you added, quote, freedom is in our DNA. Tell us more about why that is.
Well, I think that it's because it's just 33rd year of our restored independence. So you can imagine that this memory of how you live under the rules of the others, of the occupant state, as a matter of fact, and how you need to seize the momentum to regain your country back, to be responsible for your own fate. How important it is, how strong will there should be, and we can see that basically in the battleground in Ukraine now. And this is maybe why we are so compassionate and so much involved into what's happening in Ukraine, because I'm not saying that, you know, other countries do not value freedom, because this is not true. But I think from a different historical perspective, where the memory of real fight for freedom is somewhere, you know, more in the historical books than in your sort of day-to-day narratives, it becomes at some point, most probably, they believe that, you know, freedom is something that you just get for granted, that it's just there, like air you breathe. It is there, and why should I think about it? But when you just remember how tough it was to sort of grab your country back, claw your country back from the ones who wanted to destroy it, this living memory is still omnipresent in countries like Lithuania and other Baltic states, and I think also in Central Eastern Europe to a large extent, although their level of enslavement was somewhat milder than the countries that were included into USSR. So definitely, you mentioned the 100 years of our diplomatic relations, but for 50 years of those years, Lithuania was not able to implement their right to have international relations with other countries because it was under occupation from 1940 until 1990. So this is, I think, why we can say that this living memory makes our ears maybe a little bit thinner to what is happening in other parts of the world. But also, Lithuania is a country that is great, but not huge by territory or by number of inhabitants. So for countries like Lithuania, I think this general concept of a globe functioning as a set of rules, not only friendly alliances, but also a set of rules, is also a very pragmatic approach, because those rules typically enshrine the values that we speak about: the rule of law, the freedom of speech, independence of courts, free elections, private property, and everything we sort of base our countries and our daily lives on. So this set of rules, which we also call values of liberal democracy, is also something that protects countries like Lithuania, also in a very practical way, I would say, from bullying of the big ones.
Well, thank you for that explanation. It is very important, for the United States, for Americans. Lack of freedom is something you read about in history books, but as you said, for many Europeans, some of whom are still alive, they recall World War II, and of course, Lithuania, as you said, it wasn't that long ago that you were under Soviet rule. So I recall from my time visiting Vilnius that feeling was present in the streets of the capital, and it's very real. So thank you for sharing that. Last week in an interview with Reuters, you said that the European Union must be patient with its sanctions on Russia for its unlawful invasion of Ukraine, as most measures will only have an impact in the medium and long term. Can you elaborate more on this statement?
I think when invasion started on the 24th of February, and countries were sort of agreeing on packages of sanctions every second week, basically, there was a belief, maybe, or a hope, or maybe an illusion even among some of the audience, I would say, that when sanctions start working, sort of Russia will be switched off the electricity grid. Basically, there will be no Russia, and we will be able to accomplish a very strong push, and it will be immediate one, and the country will collapse, and it will not be able to continue the war. But for this to understand that this is wrong assumption, one needs to think more about what is Russia and what is Russia's economy. First and foremost, what is important is that Russia is a very primary economy, which is good and bad, because they are not able to produce whatever sophisticated production, and we can see that from, for example, automotive production that has collapsed completely because there are no spare parts that they typically use for their production. But the raw materials that they export, like oil, like gas, like timber, like coal or steel, it will always be at some demand around the globe, because this is a sort of primary material. So even if the developed countries decide to impose sanctions, to impose ban, then there are other countries who would most probably think twice whether they would join the ranks of the countries that are sanctioning, or they will try to gamble on this and earn their benefit. It doesn't mean that Russia will have an easy life, like, for example, that with oil price cap. Because yes, the oil price cap is somewhat maybe higher now, somewhat higher than the market price. Mm-hmm. But the countries that are still left there to purchase Russian oil, they know about the price cap, so they try to push Russia's price down, meaning that Russia's cash flow is actually decreasing. On gas, we were not able to agree about the sanctions on gas. But Russia imposed self-sanctioned itself, as a matter of fact, and so the part of Russia's gas that is still present in the European market is very small, and Russia has very limited capacities in liquefying that and sort of sending around the globe. So it is a next hit. But you must always think about what type is Russia's economy. This is first issue, and the second issue, which is even more maybe important, is that Russia is a different society. Because in a country like United States or Lithuania or whatever other democratic state, the economic hardship would mean that people will not be happy about it. You will have maybe protests, maybe uprise of the political opponents, and in the nearest elections, you will have really dire problems. But in Russia, this is different because they do not have any aspects of this democratic procedure. So it doesn't matter, as a matter of fact, how much unhappy people are. There is a Russian anecdote, as a matter of fact, about the drunkster's family, where a drunkster comes home and says, "Oh my God, vodka became more expensive." And then the kid is saying, "Oh, Pa, this means that you will drink less." And then Pa says, "No, it means that you will eat less." And this is basically the concept that enshrines the logic of Russia's society very well. Because if Putin has a choice, pensioners or military, then it will be military, and nobody cares about the pensioners, because what pensioners can do? When they speak about, Europe is freezing, now they speculate about this winter and autumn and everything, about the fact that somebody in Latvia is burning benches or they are cutting off trees in Tiergarten in Berlin because European countries do not have wood. So they basically are not speaking about the cities in Siberia that has no heating, no running water by -30 winter months, because this is not something they care about. I mean, this is not how Russia functions in a sort of as a political state. So for Russia to bear the burden of whatever restrictions is this potential is substantially bigger than for any normal country. But if you think about the medium and longer term impacts, where the manufacturing cannot adjust, the investments cannot continue, and this becomes a sort of a permanent rollover back. So it is a real problem. The problem with sort of immediate effect is that the scope for what Russian people will take on them, or what Putin will be able to pass over on Russian people, is nearly enormous.
Well, thank you for that. And your insight about what the people may or may not be able to do over the long run is important. My experience has been with autocratic regimes, unless the sanctions are really well targeted and strongly enforced, that over time they adapt. And unless there is some type of protest movement or revolt, if you will, autocratic regimes can adapt. So it's of concern, of course.
Yeah, and I think the probability of Russians protesting is very low now, because what Putin does, he sort of prioritize the military and also militia, sort of internal forces in his budget priority list. And it means that the possibility that you will get like 8.5 years, like Ilya Yashin just did 2 days ago, where he got 8.5 years, 8.5 years for just a phrase or some video on his media. It very much resembles the Stalinist times, where the court, if one may use this word, decisions for these types of activities were sort of, I don't know, incomprehensible, because it's incomprehensible to get nearly 9 years of imprisonment just for a phrase on your social media. But this is how it is now in Russia.
It's a shame for the Russian people, but we see that same type of approach by leaders giving money, supporting their military in places like North Korea and Iran. So it tells you about the state of democracy and civil society in Russia. Let me pivot a little bit to talk about people. Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Lithuania has taken a leading role in supporting Kyiv, For example, Lithuania has accepted over 75,000 refugees, as well as provided significant financial and military assistance to Ukraine's government. What else can Ukraine's allies do to further support their effort to fight back against Russia?
I would say more and faster of the same, because what is crucial in current juncture, I think the military aid is still crucial. Mm-hmm. And I know those debates about, the types of military equipment that can or cannot be provided to Ukraine, sort of with some fear of whether that will change the balance of the strategic balance if one or another decision is taken. But I want to remind that we were in a similar debate about things like HIMARS, for example, half a year ago, where people were thinking that it's enough to provide Ukraine with Stingers and Javelins and this sort of weapon, and this is at most we can do. But I mean, once they were provided the HIMARS type of weapons, we see how effective Ukraine is in sort of freeing their land and getting back territories. And by that time, I'm sorry to say this, but too many people were killed because there was a hesitation of, can we provide more sophisticated weapons or not? Then there was a debate, can Ukrainians learn how to use them? And now we see that the proficiency of Ukrainian army is very high level, and they did not waste the time that was given for them in terms of training. So when we speak about one notch further, like tanks or like long range, I can understand the debate. I do not possess any to provide, and this is a pity. But I think we need to think really that this initiative that is now on Ukrainian side cannot be wasted. Then there is, of course, especially as we see what Russia does in response, because in response, Russia tries to destroy the country sort of from inside. They try to destroy all the energy infrastructure. They try to destroy water supply and everything that people need to, the civilian people need to continue their life. So they just want to turn Ukraine into one big Syria. This is like the crazy bombardment and shelling and very precise one, because this is what they want to do. And this is, I think, this has two goals. One goal is to sort of create a push inside Ukraine so that Ukrainian people would come to their leaders and say, please stop fighting. We cannot go on like that. And if not this, then create a new wave of migration towards European countries, where European countries would say, oh, please, 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 maybe you can stop this fighting, because we cannot sustain another 5 million of refugees. I've been to Kiev 2 weeks ago. I saw how people in this darkened and quite cold city feel like. I mean, they feel very resilient. There is a huge sense of resolve. I don't think that they will easily be sort of pushed outside the country or pushed to push their government towards some sort of negotiation that we know Putin doesn't want. So I would think that, unless the situation becomes really very dire, and this you can achieve if you destroy the water supply, because electricity, heating, this is manageable, a big problem, but not the biggest problem. The biggest problem would be the lack of water supply in huge cities like Kiev. So also the help that we can provide for energy system is sort of a second most important item, and this is something we do. I know there is a very big problem, for example, for spare parts for the grid, because this is a Soviet grid, so the Western technologies do not match it. And so we look in this part of the world whether we can find something and send over. But generators and other things that, that help people and institutions to go on with blackouts and everything is something that is very, very important. And of course, people who had to flee the country, women and children mainly, we need to take care of them until they will be able to come back home. So I would say more and faster of the same.
Well, thank you for that perspective. It is clear after a series of battlefield losses the last couple of months, Putin has resorted to bombing the civilian population, the infrastructure, and to your point, to freeze them out, to make the winter tough, and hopefully make Ukraine buckle. And I agree. I think we've been, particularly the United States, too late in terms of providing some critical weapons, munitions. At this point, I think they need more air defenses, and we've hesitated to the detriment of the Ukrainians. And now all of a sudden this week, you're starting to see reports about the United States maybe will provide Patriot air defense systems, and it's been 10 months now. So
well, U.S. still was on the fast track, I would say, because we've been providing the first weapons before this invasion, and of course we had to coordinate this with U.S. because it was a U.S. systems that we were providing, and there was sort of a green light for us to do this, and we did it in the beginning of February. So we were on that, one hand finger number of countries who were providing military assistance before, because for many European countries that was a no-go for a month or so at all to think about whatever military supplies. But yes, I would agree with you that if some decisions that have been taken sooner or later were taken sooner rather than later, then we would have been able to save more lives. And about this air defense system, one might recall this incident in Poland that happened because this shelling now across the territory of the country, and the probability of incidents is sort of nearing towards the NATO borders. So if Ukraine had a better air defense, of course, the risk of those incidents would be substantially lower than they were when it happened.
Yeah, great point. Great point. I want to expand the lens a little bit, because Lithuania has been a bulwark against authoritarian pressure, both in Europe against Russia and Belarus, but also against China in the Indo-Pacific. What can the world learn from Lithuania about how to keep autocracies like Russia and China at bay? We talked a little bit about this at the beginning, but more broadly, globally, can you give us some more insights along that line?
Well, this is a good question, and sometimes I'm, I do not feel like I'm ready to be a self-proclaimed warrior of the globe against all the autocracies, because some people tend to ask us, do you have a strange habit of sort of looking around for bigger than yourselves and sort of getting into quarrel? But this is not our goal. What we want to do, we want to pursue our foreign policy and international relations in a way we find fit, as a sovereign country, as a member of EU, as a member to other international alliances. So with Russia, our historical perspective and very, very close geographical proximity, and all sorts of experiences that we had throughout the years of restored independence made us very, how would I say that, very much oriented towards decoupling and limiting of risks. With China, that was maybe slightly different, because there was a format that the country was participating in this 17+1 something, where there were 17 smaller countries and one China on the other end. And that was created maybe 10 or more years ago, and some thought that maybe this is a good format for fostering economic relations. That never came true, because China is not known for being very open towards the others. It just wants others to be open towards China's ideas. And of course, we soon found that this format brings very limited benefits, if any, to a country, and became supportive and started advocating the 27+1 approach, which we think is the only fit approach. And of course, we also had a political agenda of strengthening our ties with Taiwan, where we found lots of sort of spheres of common interest, starting from economy up to academia and whatnot. And unfortunately, and we decided to open up a representative office, and this was something China did not like. I don't think China liked the fact that we left the 17+1 format, and then this representative office that was opened after a very long period. There were no new representative offices opened in other countries, but still there are plenty of representative offices in other countries that do absolutely the same, that are responsible for maintaining the ties between Taiwanese people and people in that respective country. And so this was just sort of an item of our agenda to strengthen our ties with Taiwan. When we heard China's messages that you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't go this way, you should go this way, again, very similar cases were with Russia previously, when we were told what we are supposed to do and what we are not supposed to do. So we were not thinking about, about diplomatic relations and opening an embassy or something. That was a same solution that has been taken by other countries, well, years ago, but still. So we did not find it acceptable to sort of demand on us that we do or not do something. And of course, that had implications, because China decided to ban our exports. But in numbers, ironically, even after those 10 years in this format of 17+1, the numbers of exports that were going to Taiwan, to China, were smaller than exports that were going to Czech Republic, for example. So we know that China is not very keen in opening up its markets and its economy. And of course, there was a more complicated story where some of those limitations were seen by us as an interference into single market, where some companies dealing with Lithuanian companies all of a sudden felt some, implications of the fact that their components or some parts were produced in Lithuania. And this was something that we claimed to be an interference into single market, which is an exclusive competence of European Union. Even not a member state, neither Lithuania, nor Germany, nor France, nor nobody, but this is a competence that was decided to share and to execute jointly through European Union institution. That's why this case is in WTO.
And the EU put it up for you, which was good.
Yeah, and we were supported by United States and by other countries in this, because if China says that it is a country that is governed by rule of law. So if it is a sort of party of the agreement, so let's go and discuss this in an institution which is designed for these sorts of disputes, rather than undertaking this sort of undeclared sanctions or undeclared measures.
Well, it still took a lot of political courage, and thank you. I was in Taipei last summer. You've probably been there as well. And there are similarities, of course, to young, robust democracies bordered by strong, hungry, aggressive neighbors who want to wield their influence, and of course, both autocracies. So it's good to see others standing up for Taiwan and defending that principle. And I think we need more countries doing the same. So thank you for that. Speaking of which, gets me to another question here. Many, of course, worry that if Ukraine falls, Lithuania and the Baltics might be next to face Putin's wrath. What do you say to that, and how is Lithuania and NATO preparing for such a possibility?
Well, it is a very good question, because I'm often being asked, do you sort of fear, how do you feel being so close to the front line? I would say there are a couple of things, ironically maybe, but that have strengthened our security exactly because of this invasion. So it's very sad and very hard feeling when you know that people are dying in Ukraine every day. But if you take Lithuania as a member of NATO, then we can look what has changed because of this invasion. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, I must say that for many years we've been discussing this with our partners, whether Russia is a threat. And we constantly were hearing this, you cannot all the time think about your complicated past. And this is your trauma speaking, because if we manage to trade in other not exactly democratic countries into some sort of reason, so we will trade in also Russians, because they are a bunch of crooks, they are a bunch of corrupted elite, but they will never do something stupid like that. And this is because of your complicated past. This is why you constantly think that Russia might attack. And we were not, in a sort of a paranoid mood. We were listening to what happens in Russia. And when they changed their anthem back to Soviet anthem, and that was 2000 or something, at that point, I thought this will not mature well, because it does not seem a big deal. Well, they just changed an anthem. Why worry? But it started with an anthem, then there was a Munich speech, then there was Georgia, Crimea, and whatnot. And what do you need to wait for more to understand that this is a country that has no limits? I mean, they draw boundaries where they will be allowed to. So now we have a Madrid summit declaration where you have written black, white, that Russia is a threat. Nice. Everybody agrees on this. So there is no esoteric debate anymore. Mm-hmm. Then the presence of the NATO partners on the ground, contrary to what Putin was claiming, where he was saying that it's NATO that is creeping towards Russia. This is absolutely not true, because there was no presence until the annexation of Crimea and invasion in Donbass in 2014. Then we had this EFP led by Germany coming, and now it's expanded because of invasion on 24th of February this year. So definitely the commitment of our partners, of NATO countries for Article 5 seem to be not only written in the text, but also sort of felt as a real commitment, and also with the presence and agreements to increase and strengthen the eastern flank, not only Lithuania but also other countries this year in Madrid. And the third thing, which is very important, is the fact that Finland and Sweden is on the way to join NATO. And this is something nobody would be even dreaming or thinking about 2 years ago. And this is, again, a great achievement of Putin, but this is something that adds up to our security, because now we've been cooperating also military with Finland and Sweden, definitely because the Baltic Sea is our sort of joint responsibility. But with those countries joining NATO, then the security situation in the region will change to more positive dramatically. So I think that despite the fact that there is a real war going on, I would say that Lithuania's security situation has changed to a positive side. Mm-hmm. Plus to this, all the countries in the region decided to increase their defense spending, despite that we were at 2% GDP already after 2014. So now we will be in the range of 2.5 to 3%, countries in the Baltic region, Poland, the other Baltic countries, but also the decision of Germany to change their stance towards defense and security spending, although with some delays as we see now, but still not in principle. I would say this is also something that adds up significantly to the understanding that there is no dilemma between butter and guns, because if you do not have guns, then you might not have butter at some point. And if you want to protect your butter, then you better have guns.
Well, thank you for that. And it's a shame, but you have to admit that nobody has done more to unify and strengthen NATO than Putin in many ways, and of course wake us up to the threats that Russia posed. And you gave a great little history there, but I got to say, Lithuania deserves a lot of credit. You had the prescience, if you will, to many years ago try and assert your own energy security. You built the LNG gas terminal well before 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea, and you appropriately named your terminal Independence. What did it take to bring the country together to have that foresight and make that decision? Because now, of course, energy security is the big issue, or a big issue in this.
It took Gazprom charging us the highest prices in Europe. And despite the fact that Gazprom was part of our national gas company. And this is a very telling story for those who think that we need to maintain good relations, maybe let Russian business into our markets, and then they will behave. They never behave. And in our case, that was exactly that story, where they had a shareholding in our gas company, and the price that we were paying as Lithuania, as a state, was the highest in Europe. So the government that took office in 2008, where I was working as a Minister of Finance, decided that we need to build ourselves an alternative. So this was not about security of supplies. This was about alternative. Because when we brought this alternative, when it started to be operational, the prices of Gazprom immediately went down. And we were paying market prices because they were not able to bitch on us anymore, because we had a way to supply ourselves. But now this terminal became not only a source of alternative, but also a source of security. Because Russia started this manipulation of the gas market, where they asked to pay in rubles and all sorts of those, of the games they were playing. So we said, thank you, we will not be taking any of your gas this spring. And now the LNG terminal fully supplies gas to our country, but not only to our country, but also to neighboring countries, because we also have a solidarity agreements with Latvia and Poland, whom we supply via the same terminal under those agreements, given that now this became not a sort of a balancing infrastructure that allows you to have competitive prices, but basically the way of supply, because the other way of supply is not working, or we do not want to have anything in common with that. When the terminal has been built, trust me, we're a country that lives in a geographical proximity with Russia, so there are plenty of analysts or speakers who would say you are paying crazy money for things that has no value. Go and ask, go and negotiate, go and ask Putin to lower the prices, and you will get lower prices and stuff. But it's good that this project has been finished, and with the strong support of two governments and the previous president. So now when we see how important it is, because it was never meant to be regional. When we built that, it was never meant to be regional. Now it's regional, not only Lithuanian, but also regional. So now we know what role it plays, how important it is. So all the speakers of the past now try to somehow say that they were not saying anything back about the terminal. And it's always like you have with the success that has so many appearances, right. And the bad luck is always parentless kid. So this is something like that. Nobody is speculating about LNG terminal anymore. Of course, we hear all those strange debate sometimes that it's US who is getting crazy profits for gas, because US is supplying gas to Europe now and became a big exporter. So it looks like people do not understand how the markets really works and what are the prices of what is the export price and what is the TTF price in a TTF future market. But in principle, for a country, of course, we cannot get rid of high prices because this is a global situation. I mean, TTF prices are crazy. They were absolutely cosmic in August, like 350 euros per megawatt hour, something, you know, nobody imagined just maybe 2 years ago. But the fact that we have a secured supply is very reassuring, despite the fact that yes, prices are leading to substantially high inflation. There is a need of all sorts of compensation and sort of helping people through this. But again, for us, this is just money. For Ukraine, it is much more valuable thing because they are losing people. We are just losing some money.
Prime Minister, you've been very generous with your time. So I just have 2 questions left, and then we'll let you get on with your busy day. We've touched upon this many times during our discussion, and that is the fact that Lithuania has taken a very pragmatic, realistic approach toward Russia, toward your security. You've been willing to commit not just 2% of GDP, but more to defense. You've provided overwhelming support to Ukraine, weapons. We've talked about support to refugees. Your contributions in terms of financial support has been around 700 million euros or $740 million. How do we make sure that all NATO allies take such an approach, whether it's a realistic outlook on Putin under Russia or Russia under Putin and him, that contribute more to Ukraine, that live up to their obligations to NATO? How do you drive that and sustain that over the long run? Because it doesn't appear that Putin is going away anytime soon.
Well, I think that, you know, sometimes people try to claim that Baltic countries, Poland, countries in the region are some warmongers or somebody who is, you know, interested in this war to continue. Definitely not. And we want this war to stop as soon as possible. But then there is a somewhat different approach. What is the end of the war? Because for us, the end of the war is definitely the victory of Ukraine. Because if there is any sort of Minsk, whatever, or some other city, maybe now not Minsk, that is ceasefire in line with Putin's term, this means that Putin will come back, he will rearrange, he will regroup, he will replenish his stock one way or another with worse weapons, with something. He will mobilize another couple of millions because he does not care about people's life, because the value of people's life is absolutely zero in Russia. So he has nearly, I don't know, endless resources for that in Russia. But this will not be the end of the war. And it means that this war will start again at some point when Putin will find fit. So this is our major message towards our friends and partners, that everybody is interested in end of this war. But if somebody thinks that some appeasement or something might be the end of the war, we completely disagree with that. It will, because Putin does not show any interest in negotiation, so he just wants to dictate his view of the situation. He will just impose this as a fait accompli, but it doesn't matter that he will stop. He will not stop, and there will be a next season, like you have in Syria, only that these series are very sad because there are people who are really dying, not on TV. So for this to happen, but our recipe is always the same: more weapons to Ukraine, stronger support to Ukraine, and possibility for Ukraine to clean the territory and claim back the territory. But and the longer we are in debate, the more people will start the hardship, they will become tired, will lose attention span and everything. So it should be in our best interest to provide Ukraine with as much support as realistically possible so that this war ends sooner. But if there is a push to negotiate about something that is unacceptable to Ukraine, then it means that this is not peace.
Well, thank you, Madam Prime Minister. You answered my first question and my second and third as well, my final one. So thank you for that. It was a very great elaboration. And I appreciate all of your thoughtful, insightful, and strategic comments today. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. I think it is really a great pleasure to speak with like-minded people and like-minded audience. And I found lots of good questions in the United States during my visit, and most of them sort of proved me that there are so many people who are on the right side of this history with a full understanding of it, not only with a human sympathy and sort of passion for Ukrainian people who fight in the front line, but also with a very clear understanding of what is going on and what is at stake. And this is why United States is the land of freedom, so maybe no surprise there, but good to speak to like-minded people always. Well,
thank you, Madam Prime Minister, and thank you not just for joining us today in our discussion, but really for your principled leadership and courage. It means a lot, and you've set quite a high standard in Europe on this conflict, and we really appreciate that as well. So, and I also want to thank the audience today for tuning in to our conversation, the latest in a series of discussions with world leaders on the challenges and opportunities the United States, its allies, and our partners are facing today and in the years ahead. So thank you all as well.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you.